On today's Locked On Jayhawks, Tre White, is he going to be KU's third best player? Certainly presents a very valuable player on the wing for KU. And could the Jayhawks be getting more from Samis Calderon than they might have thought 3 months ago?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. And thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe. And on today's edition of LOJ, we're talking the Kansas basketball wing position outlook. We're going to get into all the players, how it compares to last year's team, and what KU could expect from this position group. That's a very interesting position group because it's not one that KU has a lot of bodies that are probably going to be a part of the rotation for. And how does that affect the way they want to play? How does it affect this team? And we'll get to some of the latest news with some of the KU football injury report and some KU volleyball, KU women's soccer as well. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Okay, so the wing position at Kansas is one that is, this is obviously, there's other positions like the lead guard position when you have Darryn Peterson, when you have the center position with Flory, Bidunga, and the talent and some of the, other interesting pieces you have. It's not necessarily the best position Kansas has. In fact, it might be the one with maybe those question marks. Not that I have question marks about Tre White, just about the depth and, how much are you going to be able to play two-wing basketball in kind of a modern era of college basketball, but it's certainly the most unique because of the lack of depth and how you are going to deploy this position group for KU. There was a recent comment from Bill Self talking about Jaden Dawson even playing some 4 minutes for KU because basically you're just trying to get as many of those guards on the floor. You have a lot of them at one time as possible and kind of surrounding a center. Then you also have the situation where it's like, okay, maybe you play a little too big basketball. Maybe you're playing Flory at the 4 next to Paul and B at the 5. Maybe you're playing Bryson Tiller at the 4 next to Flory at the 5. And in both of those scenarios, you're not really playing any wings if you're Kansas. And at the same point in time, Tre White is probably due for huge minutes for Kansas this season. Now, if we compare this unit to where it was a season ago, last year, I think you could make a case that Kansas didn't really have any true wings. Like KJ Adams was playing the 4, so in a sense, he was a wing in some ways of his game. But I think more often than not, I classified KJ as more of a big man than a wing. When you look at Rylan Griffin, yes, technically Rylan Griffin is a wing, but also when you look at what Rylan Griffin does, he just kind of shoots the basketball. You could argue that Rylan, it's funny because two guards, which I view Rylan Griffin as a true shooting guard, you could make the argument they're a guard. You can make the argument they're a wing if you're having this discussion, right? But if you want to disclude from that, you can. And then with AJ Storr, body-wise, of course he's a wing. He's kind of a power athlete, transition player. In a lot of senses, from a scoring perspective, he is a scoring wing. But from a rebounding perspective, from a, defensive perspective, from an ability to play the 4, if you classify wings as being somebody who can play the 2, 3, or 4, AJ Storr was not those things. So you didn't really have a traditional wing, a true wing to a certain extent. You had kind of asterisk wings on last year's roster, and you didn't really have. So from the standpoint of Tre White is a wing. Tre White is a wing. There's no debate, argument about it. So from that standpoint, okay, that's something that you have on this year's team that you actually kind of didn't on last year's team. And honestly, Samis Calderon is into that as well. Corbin Allen, who we'll touch on at the end here, more of a developmental player. Don't really expect him to be part of the rotation this year, but he is kind of a traditional wing as well. So you actually have a little bit more of that, even though I don't know how many minutes you're going to get from all of those guys necessarily. But it's funny because if you're comparing, Tre White, for instance, to AJ Storr, at that wing position, if we're just talking about the accolades and the performance they had coming into their season at Kansas, obviously AJ Storr comes in with bigger hype and was the more, accomplished basketball player the year before. If we're just looking at what AJ Storr actually did for Kansas in his 1 year in Lawrence, and again, if you want to count, Rylan Griffin and KJ Adams into this, then you can. But for Storr specifically, you're talking 6.1 points per game, 1.7 rebounds per game, 0.7 assists per game on 38% from the floor, 68% from the foul line, 29% from three in 16 minutes per game. I would take the over on all of those for Tre White. And in fact, if Tre White does not go over on any of those, like he should be over on all of them. If he's not, like that is probably a bad thing about how the season went for KU at the wing position and for Tre White. I expect him to be better in every area. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you're comparing to what you think you're going to get from Tre White this year to what you actually got from AJ Storr last year, it is an improvement for KU. But again, if you're arguing, okay, but Storr came in a second team all Big Ten player, whereas Tre White was more of a role player on Illinois last year in the same conference, you would say, okay, maybe the hype is bigger for AJ Storr. But then you also get into the conversation of fit, and you say, okay, but Tre White is probably actually a better fit. Like AJ Storr was never a good fit for Bill Self in Kansas. Tre White's a great fit in a lot of ways. He does a lot of things well. He has shown it again, like at Illinois, he played with, first round draft pick and that Illinois had on a 6 seed team that was at least solid. Like it was pretty good. There's just reasons like his rebounding ability, being at least a solid defender. There are reasons he can be a complementary piece and can be an off-ball player and be a better fitting player more than AJ Storr ever was. And some of those things we got a little too tantalized with just the talent and the production that he had at Wisconsin. So you look at the potential starters for KU. I think the only guy who is a potential starter from this group is Tre White. We'll get to Samis Calderon in a second, and I think he's a potential rotation guy, but Tre White is the only potential starter from this group. And because Kansas doesn't have a lot of options at the 4 necessarily, I think you look at Tre White as being someone who, like, okay, if he gets a handful of minutes playing the 3, that could make sense. But then again, when you think about all the guards KU has that need to get minutes, I think a majority of the lineups are going to have Tre White at the 4. If he plays 30 minutes per game, 28 of those 30 are probably going to come with him at the 4. It's going to be a very high volume or percentage of wherever those minutes come. So he's listed at 6'7", 210 pounds. Last year, he played 23.5 minutes per game, 10.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, 0.8 assists per game, 0.4 steals per game, 0.4 blocks per game, 51% from the floor, 33% from 3. That's on 2.2 attempts per game, 82.4% at the foul line. Also very strong rebound rates, over the 90th percentile in some of those rebound rates. And so is it worrisome at all that he goes from playing 23 minutes per game again on a 6-seed Illinois team to a Kansas team you're hoping gets certainly a better seed than that, to playing more minutes and playing a bigger role at Kansas? No, because if you look at if you extrapolate those minutes out into bigger minutes and what the numbers would look like, it looks even better. 2, it's all going to be, whether you play 23 or 28 minutes per game, like the difference there is kind of just going to come down to what else is on the roster around you. And for Illinois, they, maybe didn't need as many minutes there, whereas Kansas will. Also, as good as some of the Illinois freshmen and international players were, I don't think they had a Darryn Peterson. That's a different situation. So, no, not worrisome at all. Plus, hey, guys get better from one year to the next. As far as his position and role on the team, like I said, I think mostly playing the 4 for KU. Not a ton of other options there for Kansas. You're either playing Calderon at the 4, you're playing Tiller at the 4, you're playing Flory at the 4 if you're playing 2 big basketball, or you're playing that situation of like Jaden Dawson at the 4. So that means a lot of minutes for Tre White at the 4. And as far as like what his role is, I think it's that Swiss Army knife type guy. I think it's to be one of the best defenders on the floor. I think it's to be KU's primary wing defender when he's on the floor, and overall still be at least an average to above average to good defender, somewhere in that range. To hit the occasional open 3, if you're taking 3 3-pointers per game, can you shoot it at a 33, 34% clip? And just being a good connective piece and ball mover, the occasional score, like again, just doing a little bit of everything to pitch in and be a winning player for KU. And I think the ceiling outcome here is honestly like Tre White could end up being KU's 3rd best player this season, right? You look at Darryn Peterson, you look at Flory Bidunga. Those are your obvious choices for the top 2. But he winds up being that 3rd best player on the team because he's good at attacking the basket. He's good at attacking closeouts. He's good at hitting open shots. He is a 6 or 7 rebound per game guy, and just doing a lot of things for KU to be their the primary defender for opposing wings. And I kind of think of him like the Kevin McCullough role from Kevin McCullough's first season at Kansas when Jalen Wilson was the guy. And you had Jalen Wilson as the guy. You had Grady Dick as kind of your other scoring option. You had some other pieces on that team. Kevin McCullough was not your primary scoring option. He still gave you 11, 12 points per game. He gave you, 6, 7 rebounds per game, gave you a couple assists per game. I'm not saying Tre White's going to be that good of a defender. Kevin McCullough was an incredible defender, but kind of just pitching in a lot of different ways. And that is an all Big 12 level guy. It might not be all Big 12 first team, but, it could be all Big 12 third team, all Big 12 honorable mention, especially if that good efficiency comes on a winning team. So I think the most likely outcome, honestly, the only real difference I have from the ceiling and the likely outcome, I think with Tre White, it's a very narrowed scope of where things could go, like with Paul and Bia or with, Cole Rosario, there's a very wide range of what can happen here. It feels a more narrow range of outcomes with Tre White. I think a higher floor, maybe not a ceiling of being an All-American or something like that. But I think the two swing skills are probably just between the most likely and the ceiling. It's the 3-point shooting and the defense. Are you an average defender or are you a good defender? Are you a 32% 3-point shooter on 2 attempts per game, or are you a 36% 3-point shooter on 4 attempts per game? There's just small, minute details between the two of those that are going to separate just how good it is. But I think regardless, KU got a useful player here. I think both by value and by scarcity, he's going to get a lot of minutes for KU. Again, a lot of those at the 4. And I think just be an overall very helpful complementary player to what this roster is and has at the top with Darryn Peterson and Flory Bidunga. All right, what about the rest of the wing position? Could Samis Calderon be in the rotation? We'll get to that and more. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth. Whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that helps you bring your financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch's built for people with busy lives. If you've kind of put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. They do the heavy lifting just for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. If you go and take a look at it, some of the charts and graphs, they're color coded. They kind of show cash flow. They have spending. It just kind of breaks it down in a super digestible, easy to understand way that pops out. I think sometimes for people, money can feel like Zach Galifianakis in the Hangover, where all the numbers are going around. Not with Monarch. You get all that nice, easy to see money, color coded, the charts, the graphs. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you for joining us. And don't forget, you can check out Locked On College Football or Locked On College Basketball for a second listen every day. Okay. What about some of the other rotation players that KU could certainly have as part of this wing group? Well, we mentioned there's really only 3 wings on the roster for KU. So the next guy up would be Samis Calderon, and he is the 6'8", 200-pound, 7'2" wingspan wing who can play the 3-4. I guess I've said this before. Theoretically, if Flory, Tiller, and Flory, Bryson Tiller, and Paul Mbia all were in foul trouble or hurt or whatever, who would be your next guy up at center? I guess it would be Calderon because he has a 7'2" wingspan, also a near 37-inch max vertical. So dude's a freak athlete, and he's chiseled to go with it. Last year playing for Overtime Elite, 26 minutes per game, 10.1 points per game, 5.9 rebounds per game, 2.8 assists per game. This is through all his competitions, by the way. 2.8 turnovers per game, so a lot there. 0.7 steals per game, 1.5 blocks per game. He shot 61% on twos, 28% on threes, and 73% at the foul line. And so you look at it and you're like, okay, the 3-point shooting, a little bit inconsistent there. Clearly a good athlete. That translated to shooting well on twos, translated to over 2 stocks per game. The 10.6 rebounds, 3 assists in 26 minutes, those are solid for him. And so you look at the position and the role on the team. I think a backup 3-4 wing needed for certain matchups. Like maybe if you are playing a more wing dependent team, a more wing heavy team, maybe he does play a little bit more to help you with defense in that specific matchup. If you need to play an opponent who's really big, you could play Calderon at the 3 with Tiller at the 4 and Flory at the 5 or something, I guess, if you really wanted to. I don't know what that'll do spacing wise on offense, but I guess Tiller and Calderon can at least shoot it a little bit, even if it's not consistent. But I especially see Calderon being like useful if Tre White gets in foul trouble, or gets hurt or something. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but that would be kind of the situation where you would need him. And I guess like I said, like he does kind of represent that emergency fourth center. But I think the ceiling outcome here for Calderon is he does become a rotation player in year 1, and how that happens is he beats out one of Jaden Dawson or Cole Rosario, either because he's better and or Bill Self wants more true wings in the rotation. When you look at it from a perspective of if we assume the 5 starters are going to come from the group of, okay, you have Darryn Peterson and Flory Bidunga. That's kind of locks there. You have Tre White, who we talked about. Okay, so that's 3. Between Melvin Council, Elmarco Jackson, Jaden Dawson, probably 2 of those 3. If you want to throw Cole Rosario in there, okay, 2 of those 4. But now you're 5, and then the other 2 of that group would make up 7, and then Paul Mbia, your backup center, would make up 8. So that's kind of your rotation. So then it's like, okay, well, can you beat out one of those guards? Can you beat out one of Elmarco Jackson or Jaden Dawson or Cole Rosario for the 8th man, the rotation spot, right? That would kind of be the spot that you're looking at. And I think from a what that looks like is you'd be seeing his athleticism, you'd be seeing his length on display with good rebounding, with inside scoring. And can the 3-point shot at least come along to be, what Tre White did, right? Tre White last year, 2.2 attempts per game, 32%. If Samis Calderon can do that this year for Kansas, I think that would be a good outcome from his 3-point shot. Now, what's the most likely outcome? I do think the most likely outcome is those guards are ahead of him, and that I'm viewing him as like a 9th or 10th man, just depending if you want to say Bryson Tiller is the 9th man or Samis Calderon's the 9th man. And then the other one would be the 10th guy, right? It just kind of depends how you want to go about that there, to where that guy's playing spot minutes, right? Based on specific matchups, based on if you practiced well the week leading up, based on if somebody's hurt or somebody's in foul trouble, based on, if you just come in for a few minutes and start playing well and Bill Self says, you know what, today you're going to get 15 minutes, whatever. Based on a lot of those different, variables and things, he gets more or less playing time in certain games, sometimes doesn't play, sometimes plays, 10, 12, 15 minutes. And maybe he has one game during the season or 2 games where we go, that was the Samis Calderon game. That was the game that he helped swing it for KU off the bench. I also think he's going to have, especially in like the non-con and some of the early season, when he's getting some playing time against lesser teams, you're breaking out in transition. He's going to have some really fun dunk highlights. I think him and Cole Rosario are going to have a lot of fun ones there. But yeah, Calderon's definitely going to do that. Okay. And then you get to the developmental part of the roster, which is Corbin Allen, 6'5", 175-pound wing, over 16 points, nearly 9 rebounds per game for Oak Park. That was the team coached by Sharon Collins to a state title. And so I think when you look at this year, like, I don't think the expectation is for Corbin Allen to be a rotation player. Wouldn't shock me if he ends up redshirting. It's to probably like help out in practice, give you another wing body, and then you hope a developmental player, right? If he ends up, never surpassing being your, 10th man, like, okay, fine. You added a local kid to be a developmental player, and he helped to be a program guy. If he ends up, developing into being a 7th or 8th man, that's great. If he ends up developing and develops his 3-point shot, and you get a local kid who ends up being, a 5th starter on a team or something, that's cool too, like a Connor Tehan or a Brady Morningstar, right? So that's kind of the idea here. And like I said, if you're looking at what you're looking to develop, I think it would be the 3-point shot, because he was playing, maybe more of like a 4-man for his high school team. Because, if you're 6'5" at high school in the local area, like, a lot of times you're going to be one of the taller kids on the team. And he was a very effective player in doing so. But now that you're at Kansas, you're more of a on the perimeter type of wing. And so can you work on the 3-point shot? If he can eventually be a knockdown 3-point shooter, that's how you work your way on the court, especially knowing you do some other things well. So that's the wing position for KU. It's a little more thin of a position, but still very interesting, I guess, ceiling raising potential player in Samis Calderon, and a very interesting player in terms of just how good is he going to be with Tre White? You feel pretty good about him, but like, what if he ends up being your third best player? And that, could be a good thing if it's not by default, if it's because he just ends up being that good. Okay, I want to get into some of the latest KU football injuries and little women's volleyball who almost took down the defending champs. Today's episode of Locked on Jayhawks is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And over at FanDuel, you can get some futures still before the week 1 action gets going in college football. You want to bet on somebody to win the national title? I mean, Clemson's going at 13-1. Penn State's going at 7-1 with Andy Kotelnicki. Oregon's talented, a little inexperienced, but maybe you want to bet on that 13-1. LSU and Notre Dame at 14-1. Where are those Kansas Jayhawks? You might be asking. 350-1 to win the national title. You can get for the Heisman as well with Jalen Daniels. We could have got him at like 100-1 before week 0. Now he's at 80-1. So they're buying into it at least a little bit there to push him up the line. You can get on that. You can get college basketball futures as well. You want Darryn Peterson to win National Player of the Year, the Wooden Award, at plus 850. Get that and plenty other deals going on over at FanDuel. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode of Locked on Jayhawks is also brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's SHCollege5 at supplyhouse.com. Real service, real people. Supply House, again, SHCollege5 for 5% off at Supply House. Thanks for joining us on Locked on Jayhawks. Again, don't forget to check out Locked on College Football or Locked on College Basketball for your second listen every day. Okay, a little bit of an update on the injury front for KU football. This comes from this tweet from Henry Greenstein of the Lawrence Journal-World and KUSports.com. And he noted that on the press conference on Monday with Lance Leipold, that Dean Miller is likely to play on Friday. So that's good news for the KU defensive end. Kansas actually got a good amount. I think it was 19 pressures against Fresno State. And that was without Dean Miller, who led the team in sacks the season ago and was all Big 12 second team. So that'll give him just another boost on the defensive line. LaShawn Williams is questionable or doubtful. I think it's interesting that there's the or there. That tells me that he's on the wrong side of questionable, though. And I guess you're playing Wagner, like, why risk it? The fact that it is at least close to questionable, though, that does make me think that it's not a long-term injury. Now, could you just be hiding stuff because you want to, hide it from the Missouri game in a couple weeks? Maybe. But that does give me hope at the very least that he could be back maybe after the bye week, after the Missouri game. Again, that's just reading between tea leaves. I have no idea. I have no knowledge on what the injury is. And then he also said players who will be out include Dylan Brooks, Gage Keys, and Joseph Sip Jr. Really unfortunate for Sip Jr. because he had a chance to start over Trey Lathan. Now, Lathan might have beat him out because it seems like Lathan's a pretty good player himself, but Sip's a good player too. At the very least, it would give you more linebacker depth. Keys, obviously, we know will have a spot in the rotation on the defensive line whenever he does come back. So hope he's all right. And obviously very unfortunate with the injury stuff with Dylan Brooks. Just feels like he can't catch a break with injuries. Now Lance Leipold also added, and this is on the tweet from Henry Greenstein on Hawk Talk, that Jason Gilliam will be doubtful for Friday. He did not play in the opener, was the leader for the Hawk position when it's more of the linebacker side of the Hawk position for KU. And so he kind of remains out. And so maybe that means more opportunities for Ezra Vidral. We had an opportunity to talk about snap count winners and losers on yesterday's episode. So catch it if you already haven't. And thank you if you already did and you're an everydayer. KU women's volleyball almost took down the defending national champions and many-time national champions in Penn State on, Monday night. So a 1-1 start to the season for KU volleyball in the Matt Ulmer era. 5-set win over Vanderbilt. That one got a little scary, but first match of the season, you're figuring each other out and stuff. And then they go up 2-1. They had a match point in the fourth set against Penn State, ended up falling 30-28 in the fourth, and then fell 15-13 in the fifth. So played their butts off. Penn State ranked second in the country, again, defending champs. They're one of the volleyball blue bloods. And in the early going of the season for KU, Ryan Swanson, Grace Nelson, Reese Patasic, Selena Laban, Giovanna Zelenovic, like they've all had different moments where they've contributed and looked really good. And with Zelenovic, like she is leading a powerful KU block. They got some size up front, and KU going international has certainly beefed up some of their volleyball attack and power at the front net. It's been fun to see. And then KU women's soccer is also off to a 3-0-1 start. They just earned a draw as it was 0-0 against Utah State. Before that, they won 3-2 against Utah Valley, 1-0 against South Dakota State, and 5-2 against Missouri State. Now the schedule starts to heat up a little bit. Number 2, Florida State is coming to Rock Chalk Park in Lawrence on Thursday, August 28th. So that's actually a fun one to go out to. If you've never been to Rock Chalk Park, it's a really cool, intimate venue. And to be there when they play number 2, that's probably going to be pretty cool. See if Kansas can get a result out of that. And then they'll be against Drake and Yale after that. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, or you can like and subscribe. See you back on Thursday. We'll get back into the KU football grind, talking a little KU Wagner, that coming up later this week. Thank you, Everydayers. See you next time on Locked On Jayhawks.